The rain battered the windows of our Brooklyn apartment, a relentless drumbeat that drowned out the silence between us. 7 years. And here we were, staring at the wreckage of what used to be love. Our anniversary dinner growing cold on the table. "I'm done, Eli," Lucas said, his voice a blade slicing through the air. Sharp and final. I froze, my fork hovering over the untouched pasta, my heart slamming against my ribs. Lucas, my Lucas, with his hazel eyes that once lit up at my stupid jokes, now looked at me like I was a stranger. The man I'd built a life with, shared dreams, late-night talks, and quiet mornings tangled in sheets, was slipping away, and I couldn't find the words to stop him. We'd met in a crowded Manhattan bar, two 20-somethings nursing cheap beers and bruised hearts. I was a graphic designer, scraping by on freelance gigs, while Lucas was a bartender with a smile that could charm the stars from the sky. That night, he'd leaned over the counter, his grin teasing, and said, "You look like you need a story to tell." I laughed, and somehow, we became each other's story. We moved in together after 6 months, built a home filled with mismatched furniture and shared dreams. We were unstoppable until we weren't. The cracks started small. Lucas's late shifts at the bar turned into all-nighters, his phone buzzing with texts he'd dismiss as work stuff. I'd buried myself in projects, ignoring the growing distance, convincing myself it was just a phase. But tonight, on our 7th anniversary, the truth was undeniable. He was done, and I was too stubborn to beg. "I can't keep pretending," Lucas said, running a hand through his damp hair, his voice trembling despite the conviction. Us, it's not working anymore." His eyes flicked to the floor, avoiding mine, as if looking at me would unravel him. I stood, my chair scraping against the hardwood, the sound jarring in the quiet. "So that's it. 7 years. And you just walk away." My voice cracked, betraying the anger I tried to hold on to. But beneath it, fear clawed at my fear of losing him, of facing a world where we weren't us. He didn't answer. He just sat there, hands clasped, staring at the table like it held the answers I couldn't give. I grabbed my jacket and stormed out into the rain, the door slamming behind me. The city swallowed me whole, its chaos a mirror to the storm inside me. I wandered aimlessly, my sneakers soaking through, my thoughts spiraling. How had we gone from whispering, "I love you," under the stars to this? Was it my fault? Had I pushed him away with my late nights, my silences, my refusal to confront the truth? I ended up at our old haunt, a dive bar called Rusty's, where we'd spent countless nights laughing over warm beer. The bartender, a grizzled guy named Joe, slid a whiskey my way without a word. I stared at the amber liquid, remembering Lucas's laugh, the way his hand fit perfectly in mine. My phone buzzed in my pocket, but I ignored it. I wasn't ready to hear his voice, to face the finality of his words. Hours passed, the bar emptying out, the rain slowing to a drizzle. I paid my tab and stepped outside, the cool air hitting my face like a slap. My phone buzzed again, insistent, and I finally looked at it. Lucas's name glowed on the screen, a missed call from 10 minutes ago. Then another, and a voicemail. My thumb hovered over the play button, my heart pounding. Why was he calling now? To twist the knife deeper, to say he'd already packed my things. I pressed play, bracing myself, but what I heard wasn't anger or cold indifference. It was Lucas, his voice raw, choked with sobs. "Eli, please, I messed up. Come back. I'm sorry." I stood frozen, the city humming around me, my breath catching in my throat. The man who'd just shattered my world was crying, begging me to return. But could I? After everything, could I walk back into that apartment, into his arms, and pretend the hurt hadn't carved itself into my bones? I started walking, the streets slick and shimmering under the streetlights. Each step felt heavier, the weight of 7 years pulling me in two directions toward Lucas, toward the life we'd built, and away, toward the unknown. I didn't know what I'd find when I reached our door, but I knew one thing: this wasn't the end. Not yet. The streetlights flickered as I trudged back toward our apartment, Lucas's voicemail looping in my head. His voice, broken and desperate, was a sound I'd never heard before, not in 7 years, not even during our worst fights. It clawed at me, stirring a mix of hope and dread that made my chest ache. The Brooklyn streets were quiet now, the rain reduced to a faint mist that clung to my skin. I passed the bodega where we'd buy late-night snacks, the park where Lucas once kissed me under a cherry blossom tree, each memory a pinprick to my heart. I wanted to run back to him, to fix whatever had broken, but my pride, or maybe my fear, kept my steps slow, deliberate. When I reached our building, I hesitated at the door, my hand hovering over the buzzer. What was I walking into? An apology? A fight? Or worse, a goodbye that would stick this time? I pressed the button, the sound sharp in the stillness, and waited. The door buzzed open, and I climbed the stairs, each step echoing like a countdown. Lucas stood in the doorway, his eyes red-rimmed, his hair a mess. He looked smaller, somehow, like the weight of the night had crushed the confidence he usually wore like armor. "Eli," he whispered, stepping aside to let me in. The apartment smelled of burned candles and regret, the remnants of our anniversary dinner still on the table. "Why?" I asked, my voice low, barely containing the storm inside me. "Why call me back? You said you were done." I dropped my jacket on the couch, keeping my distance, afraid that getting too close would pull me under. He ran a hand over his face, his fingers trembling. I didn't mean it. I was scared. Okay. Scared of how much I love you, how much it hurts when we're falling apart. His voice cracked, and he looked away, toward the window where the city lights blurred through the rain-streaked glass. I wanted to scream, to shake him, to demand answers for the months of distance, the late nights, the secrets he'd kept. But his words stopped me. Scared. Lucas, who'd faced down homophobic slurs at his bar, who'd held my hand in public when I was too nervous to do it, was scared of us. It didn't make sense. "Talk to me," I said, softer now, stepping closer. "What's been going on? You've been pulling away for months. And now this. I deserve to know." He sank onto the couch, his shoulders slumping. "It's not you, Eli. It's everything. The bar's been struggling. My boss is on my case, and I've been taking extra shifts to keep it afloat. I didn't want to burden you. You've been so focused on your work, and I thought maybe you were better off without me dragging you down." I stared at him, the pieces clicking into place. The late nights, the cryptic texts, the way he dodged my questions about his day. It wasn't another person, wasn't cheating. It was him, trying to protect me in his own misguided way. "Lucas, you idiot," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "You think I'd want you to carry that alone? We're supposed to be a team." He looked up, his eyes glistening. "I know. I didn't know how to tell you I was failing. At work, at us, at everything." He reached for my hand, but I pulled back, not ready to let him in yet. "Then why tonight?" I pressed. "Why end it on our anniversary?" "Because I was breaking," he admitted, his voice barely a whisper. "I looked at you tonight, so hopeful, so you, and I felt like I didn't deserve you. I thought letting you go would be easier than watching you realize I'm not enough." His words hit like a punch, stealing my breath. I sank onto the couch beside him, close but not touching, the space between us heavy with unspoken truths. I wanted to hold him, to tell him he was enough. But the hurt still burned. A reminder of how close we'd come to losing everything. We can't keep doing this, I said finally. Hiding things. Shutting each other out. If we're going to fix this, we have to be honest. No more secrets. He nodded, wiping his eyes. I know. I want to try. Eli. I want us. I need you to want it too. I looked at him, at the man who'd been my home for 7 years, and felt the pull of love and pain, intertwined like vines. Could we rebuild? Could we find our way back to the laughter, the late-night talks, the promises we'd made? I didn't have the answers, but as I reached for his hand, his fingers warm against mine, I knew I wasn't ready to let go. The next morning, the apartment was too quiet, the kind of silence that follows a storm. Lucas was still asleep, curled on the couch where we'd talked until dawn. His face softened in a way I hadn't seen in months. I watched him, my coffee growing cold, wondering if last night's promises could hold up in the harsh light of day. We'd laid it all bare, his fears about the bar, my own insecurities about losing him to the grind of our lives. But words, even honest ones, don't erase months of distance. I slipped out to the fire escape, needing air, needing space to think. The city stretched out below, a maze of rooftops and dreams, and I wondered if we could still find our place in it. When Lucas woke, he found me there, the morning sun casting long shadows across his face. You didn't leave, he said, relief flickering in his eyes. He joined me, leaning against the railing, his shoulder brushing mine. It was a small touch, but it felt like a lifeline. I almost did, I admitted, staring at the skyline. Last night, when you called, I wasn't sure I could come back. But I'm here, Lucas. I just don't know what comes next. He nodded, his jaw tight. I don't either. But I meant what I said. I want to fix this. I want us to be us again. I turned to him, searching his face for the man I'd fallen in love with. He was still there, in the crinkle of his eyes, the way he bit his lip when he was nervous. But love wasn't enough, not without work, not without trust. Then we start small, I said. No more hiding. We talk, even when it's hard. And you let me in, Lucas. No more carrying the world alone. He agreed, and we made a plan, dinner together every night. No phones, just us. It sounded simple, but after months of drifting, it felt like climbing a mountain. That evening, we cooked together, bumping into each other in our tiny kitchen, laughing when I spilled sauce on the counter. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. Days turned into weeks, and we tried to rebuild. Lucas cut back on shifts, and I made time to listen, to ask about his day. We went to therapy, a small office in Williamsburg where a kind-eyed woman named Dr. Carter helped us unravel the knots we'd tied around each other. She asked hard questions about our fears, our families, the world that hadn't always accepted us. Lucas's parents had cut him off when he came out, and I'd never fully understood how that wound still bled. I told him about my own doubts, how I'd always felt like I had to prove I was worthy of love. One night, after a session, Lucas stopped me on the sidewalk, his breath visible in the chilly air. I never told you this, he said, his voice low, but when we met, I was terrified. I'd been burned before, and I thought you'd see through me, see I wasn't enough. But you stayed, Eli. You always stayed. I pulled him close, the city buzzing around us, and kissed him, soft and slow, like we had all the time in the world. I'm still here, I whispered. But you have to keep showing up too. He did. He started opening up, sharing the small victories and setbacks at the bar, letting me help brainstorm ways to save it. We spent weekends exploring the city, rediscovering the places that had once been our bookstore in the village, a pier on the Hudson where we'd watch sunsets. But the bar remained a shadow over us. Lucas's boss was pushing to sell, and without it, he'd lose more than a Job lose a piece of himself. One evening, as we walked home from dinner, Lucas stopped, his face pale. "They're closing the bar," he said, his voice hollow. "It's done. Next month, it's gone." I felt the ground shift beneath us. The bar wasn't just his workplace. It was where we'd met, where our story began. Losing it felt like losing a piece of us. I took his hand, squeezing it tight. "We'll figure it out," I said, though I wasn't sure how. "Together." That night, we lay awake, talking about what came next. Lucas dreamed of opening his own place, a small bar where everyone felt welcome, where we could build something new. It was a wild idea, risky and terrifying, but it sparked something in USA's shared purpose, a reason to keep fighting for each other. The idea of starting a bar consumed us. It was a lifeline, a way to channel our energy into something bigger than our pain. We spent nights hunched over our kitchen table, sketching plans on napkins, crunching numbers, dreaming up a space that felt like home. Lucas's eyes lit up when he talked about a cozy spot with warm lights, live music, and a menu of drinks named after our favorite memories. I designed mock logos, playing with fonts and colors, imagining our names on a sign above the door. But dreams don't pay bills, and reality hit hard. The bar's closure loomed, and Lucas's savings were thin. My freelance work was steady, but not enough to fund a startup. We needed investors, a location, a miracle. Doubt crept in, whispering that we were chasing a fantasy, that we'd fail and lose everything. One afternoon, I found Lucas staring at his laptop, his face drawn. "What's wrong?" I asked, sitting beside him. He turned the screen toward a rejection email from a bank, the third that week. "They don't think we're worth the risk," he said, his voice flat. "Maybe they're right." I grabbed his shoulders, forcing him to look at me. "They're wrong. We're not giving up. We've been through worse. Lucas, we'll find a way." He leaned into me, his forehead against mine, and for a moment, we just breathed, holding on to each other. That night, we went to a local queer community event, hoping to network, to find someone who believed in our vision. The room was alive with laughter, music, and stories of resilience. We met Mia, a sharp-witted entrepreneur who'd opened a bookstore in Harlem. She listened to our pitch, her eyes narrowing as Lucas described his dream. "It's bold," she said, sipping her wine. "But you need more than passion. You need a plan, and you need community." She introduced us to a group of small business owners, people who'd faced their own battles and come out stronger. They offered advice, contacts, even a lead on a vacant space in Bed-Stuy. For the first time in weeks, hope felt real. We toured the space the next day, a cramped, dusty storefront with peeling paint and a broken sign. It was far from perfect, but Lucas saw potential in every corner. "This could be ours," he said, his voice trembling with excitement. I saw it too, the bar we dreamed of, filled with people we loved, a place where we could be ourselves. We dove into the work, spending every spare moment researching loans, drafting proposals, meeting with potential investors. It was exhausting, but it brought us closer. We laughed more, fought less, found joy in the small victories, a promising email, a handshake from a supporter. But the pressure was relentless, and old fears resurfaced. Lucas worried he'd fail me again, and I struggled with my own doubts, wondering if I was enough to keep us steady. One night, after a long day of rejections, we sat on our fire escape, sharing a beer. "What if we can't do this?" Lucas asked, his voice small. "What if we lose everything? I took his hand, tracing the lines of his palm. Then we'll still have each other. That's what matters. The bar. The money, it's all just stuff. You're my home. Lucas. He looked at me, his eyes soft, and kissed me, slow and deep. It was a promise, a reminder of why we were fighting. The next day, we got a call from Mia. She'd found an investor willing to meet a queer couple who'd build a chain of restaurants and wanted to support new voices. It wasn't a done deal, but it was a chance, a spark we hadn't dared hope for. We prepared for the meeting like it was a battle, polishing our pitch, practicing every word. The night before, Lucas couldn't sleep, pacing the apartment, muttering his lines. I pulled him onto the couch, wrapping my arms around him. We've got this, I said. You and me. He nodded, resting his head against my chest. You and me, he echoed. And for the first time in months, I believed we could do anything. The meeting with the investors was a blur of nerves and adrenaline. We sat across from Sarah and Lena, a powerhouse couple who'd turned their passion for food into a small empire. Their office in Manhattan was sleek, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, a stark contrast to our scrappy dreams. Lucas's hands shook as he handed them our proposal, but his voice was steady, painting a vivid picture of our bar haven for the queer community, a place where stories like ours could thrive. Sarah leaned forward, her eyes sharp but kind. Why this bar? Why now? She asked. Lucas glanced at me, and I nodded, urging him on. He told them about the bar where we'd met, how it had been a refuge in a world that didn't always accept us. He spoke of the nights we'd spent there, building a life, and how losing it felt like losing a piece of our history. We want to create a space where everyone feels seen, he said, where love, in all its forms, is celebrated. Lena scribbled notes, her face unreadable. When it was my turn, I shared the designs I created, the logo inspired by the cherry blossom tree where Lucas had kissed me years ago. I talked about the community we'd already started building, the support we'd found, the dream that kept us going. By the end, my voice was hoarse, but I felt lighter, like we'd laid our hearts bare and they hadn't flinched. They promised to review our proposal and get back to us. We left the meeting buzzing with cautious hope, our hands clasped as we rode the subway home. Do you think they liked it? Lucas asked, his voice small against the rumble of the train. I think they saw us, I said. Really saw us. Days passed, each one heavier with anticipation. We kept busy, tweaking our plans, scouting suppliers, but the waiting gnawed at us. Lucas was restless, checking his email every hour, while I tried to stay calm, focusing on my freelance work. One evening, as we cooked dinner, the phone rang. Lucas froze, his knife hovering over a tomato. Answer it, I said, my heart pounding. It was Sarah. They were unwilling to invest, but with conditions. They wanted a detailed budget, a timeline, and a commitment to community outreach. It was daunting, but it was a yes. Lucas hung up, his eyes wide, and pulled me into a hug so tight I could barely breathe. We're doing this, Eli, he whispered. We're really doing it. The next weeks were a whirlwind. We signed a lease on the Bed-Stuy space, met with contractors, and started renovations. The storefront began to transform: new paint, new floors, a sign with our logo blooming above the door. We named the bar Blossom, a nod to our past and a promise for the future. Every nail hammered, every wall painted, felt like a step toward healing the cracks in our relationship. But the stress didn't vanish. Money was tight, and deadlines loomed. Lucas and I argued over budgets, over priorities, our tempers flaring in the heat of the moment. One night, after a fight about paint colors, of all things, I stormed out, needing air. I walked to the pier where we'd watched sunsets, staring at the water, wondering if we'd taken on too much. Lucas found me there, his silhouette framed by the city lights. "I'm sorry," he said, sitting beside me. "I get so caught up in this. I forget what matters." I leaned against him, the cold seeping through my jacket. "We're in this together, right? No matter what." "No matter what," he said, and we sat there, watching the river reflect the stars, finding our way back to each other. As opening night approached, the bar took shape. We hung fairy lights, set up tables, stocked the shelves with bottles that gleamed like jewels. The community rallied around us, friends volunteering to paint murals, local musicians offering to play. It was more than a bar, it was a testament to what we could build when we refused to give up. Opening night at Blossom was electric. The bar glowed with warm light, the air buzzing with laughter and music. Friends, neighbors, and strangers filled the space, their voices mingling with the strum of a guitar from a local band. Lucas moved behind the bar, pouring drinks with a smile that lit up the room, while I greeted guests, my heart swelling with pride. This was our dream, alive and breathing, a place where everyone belonged. Mia was there, raising a glass to us, her grin wide. "You did it," she said, pulling us into a hug. "This place, it's magic." I looked around, at the murals on the walls, the cherry blossom logo etched into the coasters, and felt a lump in my throat. We'd built this from the ashes of our lowest moment, and it was beautiful. But even in the joy, I felt the weight of what it had taken to get here. The late nights, the fights, the moments when we'd almost lost each other. Lucas caught my eye from across the room, and for a second, it was just us, the world fading away. He mouthed, "I love you," and I felt my heart steady, anchored by the promise we'd made to keep fighting for each other. The night wasn't perfect. A keg ran dry, a glass broke, and we ran out of ice halfway through. But no one cared. People danced, shared stories, toasted to love and resilience. An older couple, married for decades, told us how they'd met in a bar like this, back when being openly queer was a risk. Their story reminded me why we'd fought for this, why we'd fought for us. As the night wound down, Lucas and I stole a moment outside, the cool air a relief after the crowded bar. He leaned against the wall, his tie loose, his eyes tired but bright. "We did good, didn't we?" he asked, his voice soft. "We did better than good," I said, taking his hand. "We made something real." He pulled me close, his lips brushing mine, and for the first time in months, I felt whole. The bar was ours, but more than that, we were ours, flawed, stubborn, but still here, still choosing each other. The weeks that followed were a blur of long hours and learning curves. Blossom became a hub, a place where people came to celebrate, to mourn, to be themselves. We hosted open mic nights, drag shows, support groups. Lucas thrived, his charm drawing people in, while I found my place designing flyers, managing the books, keeping us grounded. But success didn't erase the challenges. Bills piled up, and a bad review online stung more than we expected. We leaned on each other, on our community, to keep going. One evening, as we closed up, Lucas found an old photo tucked behind the bar, a picture of us from our first date, laughing over beers at Rusty's. "Look at us," he said, his voice thick. "We were just kids." "We still are, in a way," I said, smiling. "Just kids who built something incredible." He looked at me, his eyes searching. "Are you happy, Eli? Really?" I thought about the night he'd said he was done, the rain-soaked streets, the voicemail that brought me back. I thought about the fights, the doubts, the moments when love felt like a battlefield. And I thought about now, standing in our bar, our hands intertwined, our future uncertain, but ours. Yeah, I said. I'm happy. Because of you. He kissed me, and it felt like a beginning, not an end. We weren't perfect, but we were real, and that was enough. Blossom became our life, but it didn't erase the scars of the past. Some nights, as we locked up, I'd catch Lucas staring into space, his brow furrowed, and I'd wonder if he was thinking about the night he almost walked away. I carried my own ghosts moments when I doubted him, doubted us. But we were learning to live with them, to let love outweigh the pain. One rainy afternoon, a year after opening, we got a call from Dr. Carter, our therapist. She'd heard about Blossom and wanted to host a community event there, a panel on queer mental health. It was a chance to give back, to make our space more than a bar. We said yes, diving into planning with the same passion we'd poured into the bar itself. The event was a success. The room packed with people sharing stories of struggle and survival. A young man, barely out of his teens, spoke about his fear of coming out to his family, his voice shaking but resolute. Lucas squeezed my hand under the table, and I knew he was thinking of his own past, the rejection that still stung. After the panel, we stayed late, talking with attendees, offering drinks and listening ears. It felt like a turning point, a reminder that our story wasn't just ours, it was part of something bigger. But life doesn't pause for victories. A pipe burst in the bar the next week, flooding the floor and costing us thousands. Lucas took it hard, blaming himself for not catching it sooner. I found him in the back room, surrounded by soggy boxes, his head in his hands. What if this is a sign? He asked. What if we're not cut out for this? I knelt beside him, wiping a smudge of dirt from his cheek. We've been through worse. Lucas. A flood. A fight. A bad day. It's not going to break us. Not now. He looked at me, his eyes softening. How do you do that? Stay so sure. I'm not sure, I admitted. I just know I'd rather face this with you than without you. We cleaned up the mess together, laughing through the frustration, blasting music to drown out the sound of the shop vac. Friends showed up with mops, turning a disaster into a party. That's what Blossom was, a place where people showed up. For us. For each other. As winter settled over the city, we planned a holiday party, inviting everyone who'd helped us along the way. The bar was decked out in lights and tinsel, the air warm with cider and cheer. Lucas proposed a toast, his voice steady as he thanked our community, our family. To love, he said, his eyes on me, and to never giving up. Later, as we danced to a slow song, he whispered, I almost lost you. Eli. I'll never let that happen again. I rested my head against his shoulder, feeling the rhythm of his heartbeat. You didn't lose me. You never will. The party stretched into the night, and as we locked up, snow began to fall, blanketing the city in quiet. We walked home hand in hand, the world soft and still around us. I thought about the boy I'd been 7 years ago, the one who'd fallen for a bartender with a crooked smile. I thought about the man I was now, stronger for the battles we'd fought, braver for the love we'd built. 2 years after that rain-soaked anniversary, Blossom was thriving. The bar had become a cornerstone of the neighborhood, a place where people found love, friendship, and courage. Lucas and I had grown too not into perfect versions of ourselves, but into people who knew how to fight for what mattered. We still argued, still stumbled, but we'd learned to catch each other before the fall. One spring evening, as cherry blossoms bloomed across the city, Lucas asked me to meet him at the pier where we'd watched countless sunsets. I arrived to find him standing there, a nervous smile on his face, a small box in his hand. My heart stopped, then raced, as he dropped to one knee. Eli, he said, his voice steady despite the tremor in his hands. You've been my home since the day we met. I messed up. Almost lost you. But you stayed. You believed in us when I couldn't. Will you marry me? Tears blurred my vision as I nodded, pulling him up into a kiss that tasted of salt and promise. The ring was simple, a silver band etched with a tiny cherry blossom, a symbol of everything we'd built. We stood there, wrapped in each other, the city humming around us, alive with possibility. Our wedding was small, held at Blossom, surrounded by the people who'd carried us through. Mia officiated, her words weaving our story into something timeless. We danced under fairy lights, laughed until our sides ached, and promised to keep choosing each other, no matter what. As we stood together, watching our friends celebrate, I thought about that night 2 years ago, when Lucas's words had shattered me, when I'd walked out into the rain. I thought about his voicemail, the tears in his voice, the moment we'd decided to fight for us. We'd built more than a bar, we'd built a life, one that could withstand storms, one that grew stronger with every challenge. Lucas squeezed my hand, pulling me close. Worth it? He asked, his eyes sparkling. Every second, I said, and meant it. The years ahead wouldn't be easy. There'd be more fights, more floods, more moments when doubt crept in. But we'd face them together, in a bar filled with love, in a city that had seen us at our worst and best. We weren't just surviving, we're thriving, writing a story that was messy, beautiful, and ours.